Father, and I'm thankful that you come and find us time and time again. Lord, and this week, we're going to feel as if we can't see. We're going to feel as if we're blind in a situation or a circumstance. But I'm thankful that the life of Christ lives on the inside of us, that your life is there, your abundant life, your overflowing life that can help guide us through any situation, any circumstance, whatever comes our way. Yes, your love is amazing. Your grace is amazing. Your presence is amazing. You are a rock. You are our fortress. You are our shield. You are our protection. You are our provider. You are everything for us, Lord. Doesn't matter what's going on, Lord, at our job. It doesn't matter what's going on inside of our home. It doesn't matter what's going on inside of our body. You are Lord. You are King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and we worship you here this morning. It doesn't matter how we feel. It doesn't matter what our body says. We will praise you. We will worship you. We will open up our mouths because the power of life and death is in the tongue. Just open up your mouth right now. Open up your mouth and let them know whatever you have going on, whatever your situation is. Just let them know. Whatever that heaviness is that you feel, it's heaviness in the room. Whatever that heaviness is, whatever that depression is, whatever you feel dejected about, whatever you feel despondent about, whatever you've been up worrying about all night, all week, give it to him right now. He is a present help in your time of need. He is closer than your breath. Thank you, Lord. We thank you for your presence. Spirit of the living God, do something here in our midst. Break our tradition. Break up the routine of life, the monotony that we come in and we think we know what we're going to hear. We think we know what we're going to see. We think we know what we're going to experience. Lord, show off here this morning. Show off in a mighty, miraculous way. Speak to those, even the prodigals, Lord, that aren't here today. Those people that aren't in our midst and they feel lost. And they feel as if they can't see you and they can't find you. Lord, may they know that your silence is not your absence, that you're working in their midst right now. And that may even go for anybody in here this morning. Hear that from God this morning. You may feel as if he is silent in your life, but he is not absent. He is still working. He's orchestrating every single thing. Everything that is happening with your kids, everything that is happening in your marriage, everything that's happening with the economy, everything that is happening geopolitically on the world stage right now, he knows that he's working all things, not some things. He's working all things out because he knows what the end of the story is. Don't lose sight of the tapestry. Don't lose sight of the artist, because the artist, the creator, knows what the end product is going to look like. And even though as he's drawing and as he's painting, it may look a little weird and there may be clouds over here and there's darkness, light is going to win in the end. Light is going to invade in your situation and in the situation and in history, because it's his story. He is the one that is telling the tale, and we're just part of it. We're just part of it. All right, I'll shut up. Let's get into, no. I'm excited to preach here this morning. I want to get into what, I have something to share this morning. Children, I don't know, teachers, children, you may leave. Please, thank you. I am, what? I don't know. If you don't want to, I'll hold this for next week if you want. I'm cool with that. Makes my life easier. I don't know. There's so much going on in me, and I'm preaching to myself. So if there was nobody else in there, I don't say this a lot, but if there was nobody else in the room, I would just preach this to myself. And I would enjoy it, because this is kind of just what God is doing in my life, and maybe in the life of my family a little bit. I don't know. Maybe in the life of your family too. And I was led 2 weeks ago, no, weeks ago, more than 2 weeks ago, but we started last week. We're looking at the life of Joseph in the Old Testament. And the subtitle for the series, and I'm going slow, When Life Doesn't Go Your Way. And I'm not, like, so many times, and I said it last week, it's worth repeating. You hear sermons on the life of Joseph, and you try to do so much with the story because there's so much there. It starts in Genesis 37 and it goes to Genesis 45. 20% of the book of Genesis is about the life of Joseph. And it's a huge story, and I think it's really relevant for the time that we're living in, even the last couple of years, that life has not gone the way people have wanted it to. And it's not, where maybe, COVID and the cases are rising again, but you look at a lot of different things that are going on in the world, and life is not going the way people want it to. The stock market is not going the way all of us want it to. It's going the wrong way. You're going the wrong way. You know what movie that's from? Anybody? Planes, Trains, Automobiles. Of course, Naeem knows what it's from. Megan. But yeah, so hey, speaking of that, you're going the wrong, you can't make this up. You can't make this up, right? Ready? How many of you see this sign when you're traveling somewhere and you get excited? You don't get excited. Seriously? I'm the only one in here that gets excited when I see a detour sign, because then I know I'm going to, of course I'm being facetious, I get so stressed out when I see these signs, and let me tell you why. Not because it's more time that is going to be spent getting to my destination. The biggest fear I have when I see a detour sign is, I don't know if am I going the right way? Even with the Waze app and everything, years ago, it was like for somebody that is as directionally challenged as I am, right? It was like frightening. But still, I get worried that what if I don't know where I'm going? That's the way I always go, though. I have to go that way because I don't know another way, right? And we get annoyed by detours. This past week, I'm driving home from work, and there it is. There's the detour sign. And how about the potholes, right? Isn't it so much fun to drive on the expressway right now? It's really a joy at exit 64, right? You feel like, really you're in a developing country, right? You're like, what's going on here? Does anybody work here? Did anybody see that hole? Right? I could fit my body in that hole. Are we going to fix that? Because it's been there for weeks. Sorry about that. That's just anybody else, you understand what I'm talking about, right? It really is. It's crazy. Yeah. Mike, let's pray for them. Mike, bless them. You don't have to be sorry. I love it. Again, I'm a teacher. The things I have heard in a classroom, you think that phases me? Nothing phases me. Nothing could ever faze me. I've had some of the craziest questions. Hey, this year, have I had some of the craziest things said in our first period? Tomorrow at 7:30, Taylor can attest to, right, what I'll hear tomorrow at 7:30? And I love it, though. I love it. You never know. Kids keep you young. Yeah. Anyway, that wasn't my point. Sorry, Taylor. How about this? Detours, I don't think they waste time. I think they actually save time. Bring it. Interesting. Counterintuitive, right? Detours? What do you mean they save time? What are you talking about? When I see a detour, it's going to take me longer to get from here to there. I'm going to have to take some side roads. I'm going to be stopped. But can I prove it to you that detours can actually save us time? The next time you see a sign like this is what I want you to do. Not really do this, but just think about doing this. Drive around the detour sign. Don't listen to the sign. Drive through it and go right through some nice hot asphalt and see what happens to your car. Or drive through the detour sign and drive right into the tree that is there or the down power line and see what happens to you. You would lose a lot more time on the journey if you went through the detour sign. The detour sign is there to tell you that we're going to save you some time so that you don't get hurt. I'm preaching already. You ready? I'm preaching. Detours are not in the way of our destiny as the children of God. They are our destiny. Let that sink in for a second, because I'm thinking all week, how do I make this real? Detours we look at in life, places that we've been, places that we're brought to that we don't want to be, and we say, this is a detour that I didn't ask for in life. And God says, no, on the path to your destiny, this is the place that I need to take you. This is the road that I need to take you on. You may not like it. It may be uncomfortable, but this is where I'm going to do my best work. Do you know that God's work is not measured in minutes? It's measured in lifetimes. We're in the story of Joseph, who is going to meet different detours. 2 decades it's going to take him to get from last week where we saw him with those 2 dreams. And I told you, he is a spoiled brat. And it was kind of cool. Some of you texted me during the week saying, wow, I'm kind of seeing Joseph differently. I never saw him that way. He is a spoiled brat. He is. God has to take him. He gets the 2 dreams, and he tells his brothers. He's not very smart by telling them all this, but he tells them, and yes, that may happen one day, but God says, I have to take you on a detour. There are a lot of things that have to take place. You're going to be enslaved. You're going to be imprisoned. You're going to be entrapped. Because that's the path you need to go to learn. I need to develop you. I'm not looking to destroy you. Detours are there to develop us as Christians. And so many times we look at it and go, why is this detour here? Why are you taking me here to this job? Why did this happen in my health? Why this situation with our kids? And God says, I need to take you down this path, this detour, because I need to do something inside of you. But we don't really like that. And in case you don't know anything about the story, just quick synopsis from last week. So Joseph is the 11th of 12 boys. 1 daughter, and he is the son of Jacob. He is the extension of the love between his father and mother. There were 4 different moms for the 13 kids. And the one that Jacob, his father, loves, her name was Rachel. He is an extension of that love. The other kids, they got hand-me-downs. Joseph, he got new clothes. The other kids, they got a bike. Joseph got a new car. Joseph got the iPhone. They got Androids. Why do some of you have Androids in 2022? Just contemporizing the text a little bit of the story. But that's really at the end of the day, Joseph gets the flowing robe, right? And he's so happy, and he wears it with pride and joy with his brothers, and they hate him. And the text from last week said they hated him all the more because he paraded around. We said there's incredible family dysfunction here. Can I move us into the next part of the story now? You ready? You ready for the next part of the story? Gosh, this isn't all the time. I am so excited and blessed and honored to preach this. I don't know, just all week I'm like, why is this different? I don't know, it just feels different. Should I keep that thought to myself? How do you not love the Bible? And I said to Megan this week, I said, we're driving somewhere. I said, Megan, I just love preaching stories in the Bible. I mean, because God is the greatest storyteller, right? And story is the language of the human heart. You get that? Story is the language of the human heart. And this has everything. This is everything that a great story could possibly have. And we're going to pick up here, if you're following along, I'm going to read you a lot of verses. We're in 37. I stopped at 11. We're going to go from 12 to 25 in chapter 37. Make sure you stay awake. Don't fall asleep as I read this now. All right. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem. So this is after the dream. That's where we left off last week, after the dream, near Shechem. You know how far away this is from where they are? 60 miles. Not close. And Israel said to Joseph, Israel is Jacob, name is changed, as you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them. Very well, he replied. So he said to him, go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me. Sure, Dad, I'm going to travel 60 miles and go see my brothers and then bring word back to you about them. Don't you wish they could have, they would have used, the phones, texting, to send a text message out. Hey, guys, none of that technology. You got to travel on foot. And it was pretty dangerous. So he's going to go out there. Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, what are you looking for? The guy just happens to be wandering, by the way, okay? We're going to get back to that in a little bit. He replied, I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks? My brothers. Other people have brothers too. Your brothers? How do I know your brothers, right? Okay. They have moved on from here. How does the guy know that these are his brothers? I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. You just happen to hear these guys talking about going to a place called Dothan. Okay, all right. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Then they said to one another, look, this dreamer is coming. Come, therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit, and we shall say, some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams. And then finally, the last part here. But Reuben heard it, and he delivered them out of their hands. Now, Reuben is the oldest. Why would Reuben do this? All the boys don't like him. The reason why, let me just tell you this, stopping. I have to interject and say this. Because Reuben is the oldest, he would have been the one to catch his father's ire. You're the oldest. What happened to Joseph? I'm now going to take it out on you. Do I have any eldest in here? When something happened with your younger brothers or sisters, Naeem is shaking his head, right? When something happened to them, you were the one that was responsible. Like Jameson was responsible this morning for what happened at home. I'm kidding. I told him, I'm like, you're not responsible. Nolan is like terrorizing us right now. So I'm like, for 20 minutes, I went out, I'm like, just give me 20 minutes of peace. Can you just watch your brother? Just funny. Funny stuff. Funny. Anyway, what verse am I at? I don't know. 22. Thanks for paying attention. I had to catch it myself. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit, which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. So it came to pass, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the robe of many colors, the tunic of many colors that was on him. Then they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty. There was no water in it, and they sat down to eat a meal. Why wouldn't you sit down and have some lamb chops and some hummus and some bread and celebrate what has just happened? Really, think about this. They did all this, and then they sat down and had a meal. And it's easy to just kind of move past that, like, yeah, that's just whatever. The writer is just telling us they were hungry, and they wanted something to eat. This is crazy. This whole story is nuts. Now, I want you to see this here, too. When the text says they stripped Joseph of his tunic, you know what this word means in Hebrew? It means to strip and skin an animal. That's how much anger and hatred is in these boys. They hate him. They didn't just go, hey, Joe, can we just have your coat of many colors, your robe?
They ripped that thing off because they had been staring at it day after day after day after day, and the resentment and the anger is building up, and they're clawing at him, and I think they got a couple of punches in too. Yeah, your dreams, Joseph. The text doesn't tell us, but can you imagine some of the things that were said to him? I need to make this story come really alive, because this is how I'm seeing it and envisioning what it was like for this 17-year-old boy to be taken by his flesh and blood and thrown into this pit, an abandoned cistern that is there. We'll get to Dothan in a little bit, but here, just now stop for a second and think what that pit was like that he's thrown into. It's probably jagged from the rocks that are on the side. The author is telling us that there's no water. It's austere. It's dark in there. I imagine he's kind of crunched up there. His knees are in his chest. And you know what he's doing? He's crying out to his brothers, "Save me, help me, I'm sorry. Get me out of here. I can't see, it's dark in here. Get me out of this pit. I don't want to be here anymore. Guys, the joke is over. Help!" He's screaming at the top of his lungs. How do I know that? Can I show you how I know that? Because later in the story, there's just a picture. I just want you to think of them taking the robe and throwing him in there. Oh, also, when it says they threw him in there, you know what that means in Hebrew? It literally means to take a dead body and discard it. They are taking him like an animal, ripping the robe off, and they're dumping him in like a dead body, a scene that you would see in The Godfather. Really? I mean, this is kind of crazy. But instead of leave the gun and take the cannolis, right? It's leave the hummus and take the robe. And take it back home with us so we can show Dad and we'll dip it in some blood. What kind of tale is God telling us here in this story? Because here it is. The text tells us later on, look at this. This is the brothers at the end of the story. They're recounting that day when they're going to see Joseph, who is going to be ultimately the second in command in all of Egypt, right? He's going to save civilization there. We saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. See a 17-year-old young man that is inside of the pit, and he's crying out to his brothers to let me out. Come on. And they don't even hear him, and they're sitting there. Hey, Joe, you want some lamb chops? These are really good. You want something to eat, Joe? You want some water? You thirsty? How many of us know at the end of the day, and this is part of my message for you here, pit happens. Pit happens. He is thrown into the pit, and none of us like to endure pits. Does anybody like pits? And life can be the pits. And here he is, stripped of everything that he knows. By the way, too, he's probably naked, scholars say, naked, as he's thrown and tossed in there like a dead body. You know, this is wild, too. This is what happens at times in life when we are trying to sustain ourselves and God has to pull things away that we have leaned on. A.W. Tozer talks about the crutches, and he's removed all the crutches, and here is Joseph that has nothing. He is physically naked inside of this pit, and he has nothing, and the thing that he counted on, the thing that he leaned on, this coat, his father's love, his father's adoration is gone, and guess what? He has hit rock bottom, but when you hit rock bottom in life, that's when you find out that God is the rock at the bottom of all the situations and circumstances that you go through. Did you hear me? God is the rock at the bottom. But he doesn't know that yet, because it's going to take him a lot of time to experience that. Joe, you're on a detour. Joe, detour ahead. Do you think Joe woke up that morning and said, I'm going to wear some extra clothing today. They're going to throw me in a pit. I'm probably not going to like it. You didn't know. He didn't wake up that morning expecting to be put in a pit. And many of us, we find ourselves maybe in pits right now, and you're in a pit, you went through a divorce, and you were thrown into a pit, and you didn't see it coming, and now you feel abandoned. You're in a pit. You had a diagnosis that you never saw coming. You had to go to a doctor, and you're in a pit right now. You lost your job, and the economy's down right now. You're in a pit. Many times we don't expect the pits to happen, but we get thrown in, and that's when God says, I do my best work. Inside of the pits, inside of the detours. Can we look through the Bible is replete with examples of people that went on detours. Moses, John mentioned it before, that, go to Pharaoh. God says, go to Pharaoh and tell him, I am sent you. 40 years he's on the backside of the wilderness. 40! And then God comes, and there's a theophany, and he's in the burning bush. How about Paul when he's knocked off his horse on the road to Damascus? He'll be there a couple of years in the desert. God says, you need to go on a detour. The children of Israel are going to be in the wilderness, wandering around. They're not going in a path that they thought they were going to go, and they could have gotten out so much quicker, but God says you need to go on a detour. How many of us in here are on a detour right now? How many of us are on a detour right now? And how many of us are looking at not where, in essence, let's stop looking at where he is taking us from and look more to where he's taking us to. Where, God, do you want to take me? Because that's all that matters. And we look so much into the past about what has happened. But what if God is the God of the detour? What if he is the God of the first step and he's the God of the second step? What if this Christian walk is not so much about the destination as it is about the journey? Did you hear me? We get so caught up in the destination. I got to get to the destination. And God says, no, don't miss out on the journey. And salvation is not an end point. It's a beginning point. The journey that we're on. He is the God of the detour. Salvation is not a finish line. It's a starting point. It's a starting point. So whoever in here today has been caught off guard by life, get it. Because it's going to happen. If it hasn't happened yet, it's going to happen. At some point in 2022, you're going to find yourself in a pit that you didn't see and you didn't expect. I'm not hoping you go into a pit. Don't hear me say that, but I just know how life works. And here he is. He's stuck inside this pit. And how many of us know that a lot of times pits don't have easy exits? How many of us know they don't have easy exits? And you want to get out, but life has to do some work on us. And God says, no, I'm going to do some things on you. And I said to you before, that's Joseph's life. As he's enslaved, as he's going to be entrapped, as he's going to be imprisoned, he's going to be mistreated. Friends, I'm here to tell you this morning, all of the distractions, all of the disappointment in life, all of the detours, God is orchestrating all that. That's the underlying message here. And now let's get to a great part of the story. The great part of the story, and I read it that way, kind of teasing a little bit. Look at all of the chance happenings that happen here in the story. Come on, look at them here. And I'm writing these down during the week, and I'm laughing. So Jacob decides to send Joseph to see his brothers, who are grazing their herds at Shechem. But the brothers just happen to decide to not stay in Shechem, but to go to a place called Dothan. And I can't wait to the end of the sermon to tell you about Dothan, because I think it'll blow you away, about this place that only shows up twice in the Bible. Only twice do we see this place, this geographic area, Dothan. And then from there, this man, Joseph, goes, and he just happens to come to the place where they had been, and he just happens to run into a stranger who happened to hear them talking about going from Shechem to Dothan. Really? And we look at life, and we look at situations, and we say, oh, that was just a coincidence. Really? You think this was a coincidence? that Joseph is traveling there and just happened to see this man who was standing there and just happened to hear the conversation of the brothers, and he just happened to know where they were, and Joseph just happens to go to a place called Dothan, and he just happens to find his brothers? How come we look at so much of life as coincidence? Can I tell you here that this had to happen? The pit had to happen. Do you realize that? Look, let's get to the end of the story. That if Joseph is not thrown in a pit by his brothers, listen to me, everybody dies. The whole family dies. Tens of thousands of people are going to die if Joseph is not thrown in a pit by his brothers. And it's crazy too. Joseph is not just going to be lost physically, but if this doesn't happen and he's thrown in a pit by his brothers, all of them would have been lost spiritually. I'm going deep. They would have been lost spiritually, and all of them are carrying the anger and the resentment and the pain of what the Father has done with this Son in giving him that robe. The only way God can not just, we always hear preachers focus on Joseph. Let's look at the brothers. The way God deals with the brothers is throw him in the pit, because later on I'm going to deal with your anger, and if you didn't throw him in the pit, your anger never would have been taken care of. I told you, I've lived in this story. Lived in it. Can't read it anymore. I just want to, when I go home, I'm going to read more. Just read it again and again and again. Find yourself in God's story. What is he speaking to you about? So everybody dies. There's a famine that's going to take place. And the brothers are ultimately going to be saved. But nobody sees it there. What if what you and I have been calling coincidence in life, God calls evidence? What if what you've been thinking is just a coincidence is God saying, no, this is evidence of my existence? I see so many atheists and I hear so many agnostics, and they look at life. Where is he? Where is God? And God has been speaking the entire time through situations and circumstances, and he's saying, here's evidence of who I am. Thomas Edison, he said this. He said, coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. I told you, I'm preaching on this is good. I love this. It's true. That's how he stays anonymous. It looks on the surface like it's a coincidence that Joseph shows up here, but God says, I'm pulling the strings like a puppet master behind the scenes so that what I want to do in your life, your destiny can be fulfilled. Oh, God, you're an amazing storyteller. And it's wild, too, when you look at this story. What I love is that God never really speaks in Joseph's story here. Now, what do I mean by that? The text tells us that God was with Joseph. You're going to see he's in prison. God was with Joseph. But you have to see in the beginning of Genesis, right? If I was doing exegesis and I'm just running us through the whole book of Genesis, just that one book, the first book of the Bible, in the beginning, God speaks, right? In the creation story. He speaks with Abraham and Isaac. Abraham, stay your hand when he's going to sacrifice Isaac. Jacob, he speaks. He wrestles with him. There are miracles, miracles, miracles. When you get to the story of Joseph, there is incredible silence. God, where are you? How come you're not speaking here? Where are you in the midst of his situation? You would think he talks, but he doesn't. Go read the whole book of Genesis. It doesn't happen. I said it before because it's been nailing me all week. His silence does not mean he's absent. Somebody has to hear that this morning because you feel like he's silent. And if you don't need to hear it now, you're going to need to hear it at some point. And he seems, I guess it's just the artistry of the author. And God is the author. And that means, can I tell us this? Can I tell us? Please listen to me. Because this is what I'm preaching to myself about. God's love, how do I say this? God's love is compatible with the worst things that have ever happened to you. Let me say it again. God's love for you and for me is in line with the worst disappointments that you have ever had in this world. His love is still compatible, and I can prove it to you from Joseph's story, because Joseph is put in a pit. Joseph is going to be put in a prison. Joseph's going to meet Potiphar's wife. I told you, it's weird. I call her Potiphar my whole life. And you look at situations and circumstances, and you can look at those situations, and you can go, God isn't really there. No, God is there the entire time. Just because those situations happen do not mean that his love is not there. It is ever present in your time of need. He may feel absent, but he's not. How many people need to hear that this morning? You feel like he's absent in your life. And all of the things that have happened, all of the situations you're trying to make sense. You're trying to make sense of the rejection. You're trying to make sense of the disappointment with your parents, with your spouse, with your kids, with your job, and your life. Right now, how many of you can be real and honest that you're so disappointed with how your life has been going? Disappointed. God, how did this all happen? Do you really love me? God says, I love you, even though it feels like I'm absent. Even though it feels like I'm silent and I'm not speaking, I am working things behind the scene. Wait till you see what the picture looks like in the end. Now, here's another thing that just me, as a preacher, as somebody that thinks too much, my wife likes to tell me, can you shut your brain off? I don't know how. Anybody else, you're like me. You don't know how to shut down. All I do is think. I love to just think. Think about things, all different things. And so what's interesting to me is I think about this story and I'm like, God, why didn't you just like have an angel come here? Or why wasn't there like a theophany? Why didn't you just show up in the midst of this story and tell Joseph, you, Joseph, sit there. You are a spoiled brat. You have low EQ. You're parading around in front of your brothers. No wonder they hate you. Jacob, you are the poster child for what not to do when raising children, right? You should get your license taken away. You should, really, why doesn't God use an angel to come in and say, brothers, this is hate. You're going to murder your brother. What are you doing? And then bring the family in together. Do you remember that show from years ago, Touched by an Angel? Yeah. And then at the end, after that, right, everybody is happy and it's kumbaya at the end and everybody is smitten and everybody loves each other after that. Don't you think that could have happened if the angel came in and just said that to them and told them and put them in their place? But how many of us know you can be told something, but it's not the same as being shown something? And God has to show Joseph, God has to show his brothers, God has to show Jacob through real life until life hits you in the face with a Mike Tyson uppercut. You don't get things and I don't get things. You can tell somebody, you can tell your kids about life and situations and what college is going to be like, and don't do this. I went down that path. But so many times what happens? They have to experience it. Go ahead. Go experience it on your own and see what happens. Don't you love that about God? He has to show them. Now, right? I'm going to start driving to the end. Dothan. I hope you never forget this place, this geographical area, which right here, this is Dothan today. So Dothan today, right, is an area or a place, I should say. It's going to be a story that we hear about later on in the Bible, and it's going to be in 2 Kings 6, 17 and 18. It is where the prophet Elisha is going to be, and I think it's like a couple of hundred acres, maybe when I was reading about it. We didn't go there when we were in Israel, but it really would be a cool place. And of course, all the excavations and the building and tearing down, one group of people, civilization, and then the next coming in. But it's still really cool for me to think at this geographic area that these two events take place. Now, let me show you the second event. You ready for this? Here it is, 2 Kings 6, 16 and 17. The prophet Elisha is with his servant, and they are surrounded by a great enemy. The whole city is surrounded. They wake up to this. All of the people that are with Elisha and his servant are going to be killed and destroyed. It's in Dothan. You listening? It's in Dothan. Don't be afraid, the prophet answers to him. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. When the servant is afraid, Elisha, what are we going to do? We're going to die. Don't be afraid. Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked, and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire. One of the greatest movies of all time, Eric Liddell. He saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Let him see, Lord. Let the servant see. Why am I telling you? Why am I bringing up Dothan? Why am I ending the sermon about it? Because it's in this text, and here is Joseph in one part in Genesis 37 in a pit in Dothan, in an abandoned cistern, and he's crying out to God, God, will you save me? And there is absolute silence. Then you go to Dothan a couple of centuries later, and here is Elisha. Oh, this is good. Here is Elisha, and he and the servant, they're going to cry out to God, and Elisha says, let him see there are more with us than are with them. God, I'm confused. Why, when Joseph, who was in the pit, cried out, you didn't do anything about it? And why here in Dothan, a few centuries later, when they cry out, why did you hear them in their time of need? And you know what God says? God says, I was working in both situations. Just because there were chariots of fire here, and my miracle was here, and everybody could see it, and there was no denying my power and no denying my presence, I was just doing the same exact thing. It just looks so different. You see, Elisha needed a simple salvation, but Joseph needed a complex salvation. He needed to go to a prison. He needed to go through some trials and tribulations so God could actually save him. If Joseph doesn't go through that, could you imagine what he's like as an adult? What a brat he is. God says, I need you to go through the pit even though you don't understand. This is one, I don't even care what any of you, this is one of my favorite sermons that I've ever preached. I'm preaching to myself. I don't even care. I love this story. How could you not be moved by seeing the two situations? God is working the whole time here in the pit. He's working in your life when you don't feel it and you don't see it. Stop asking, stop questioning. Why am I here? Trust the master, trust the painter, trust the artist. He knows what he's doing with the paintbrush. His love was just as active. Please, his love is just as active in the pit as it was here. But it doesn't look that way on the surface. How about when Peter prays and he's in prison? Not Peter praying. How about the church is praying in the book of Acts? And the church is praying for Peter. And what happens? The prison door opens up and Peter's free. You're free, Peter. You're free. And he shows up at the house. And the little girl answers the door. And she's like, what? How is Peter here? Because God uses an angel and he gets out of prison. And then I look at John the Baptist, who was in a prison, and he wants to be released, and he prays, and his disciples talk to Jesus, and the message is sent back, and Joseph is beheaded. John the Baptist is beheaded. How come that happened when he prayed to him and he dies, and how come Peter is let out of prison? Can we stop trying to figure everything out with God and act like we are God? You may be in a pit right now. He's doing something with the pit. He wants to grow you and develop you. He's not looking to destroy you. I'm sorry, I went deep today. Because that's the story. How sit on the surface with these kind of stuff? This is so deep. The psychological aspect, this too, with the family, the dynamics. There's so much here in this. That's why I took 2 weeks to just do the first chapter. We're going to go to 39. I'm skipping 38 because it's just weird. And I'm not touching some of the weird family stuff that I don't know how to even talk about in church. I really clear the place out. We're going to go to Potiphar's house in 39. And I'm telling you, I've already started it. I just can't get enough of this. Can we, Lord, I just pray, Father, that you would continue to do something for us as a church as we study this together. As we walk through this story, Joseph's story, we're walking through our own story. Father, we know that the pits of life, we're going to hit these pits. Help us to know, help us to see, help us to understand that you are still working. We said last week, you do your best work in the dark room. It was dark in that pit. He never expected to be there, but that's where he was, and your love was flowing to him through that situation. Help us to see the circumstances and the trials we're going through right now, that you indeed love us just as much as you did before when we weren't in that trial, when we weren't in that situation. Father, may we be faithful. I pray, Lord, that there would be a spirit of perseverance in this room, because so many Christians are getting taken out in this hour because life is not working out the way they want it to. And that's why you wanted to have this series, Lord. You wanted to have this series, not me, because you want us to trust in you in a new way in the midst of everything around us falling apart, the government falling apart, the economy falling apart. There's strife across the world, Lord, and you want us to trust you in the midst of all this. Oh, Lord, I'm thankful you do your finest work, Lord, and this is your finest hour on the world stage. Lord, may we just be faithful to the end. May we finish our race. We fight the good fight, finish the race, and like Paul, keep the faith. May everyone in here keep the faith no matter what storms life hits us with. Amen, church. Amen.